Hey everyone, and welcome to Adobe Live, or welcome back if you were just catching our last live stream with Jeremy Lord. Really excited to still be here doing our drawing and illustration this afternoon. We've only got an hour, we've got a lot to kind of play with. Very excited to be joined by illustrator, artist.
Yeah, both.
Both of those things.
Yep.
I've been to one of your art shows before, so you're definitely an artist. Bill Hope.
Hello everybody, how you doing?
It's great to have you back. We were chatting just before we went on, trying to remember when you were on the show last.
Almost a year ago, I think.
Almost a year.
Yeah. Well, it's great to be back doing some sketching.
It's great to have you back.
Thank you.
We met quite a long time ago
Yes.
at Creative Mornings.
Yeah. So, it was
Creative Mornings is a global thing, so I'm sure there's lots of people out there that have been to a Creative Mornings before. Super cool. But yeah, Bill would do the live illustration and sketching.
Yep.
The biggest challenge, because I was hosting for a while, the biggest challenge that I always had is to get people to watch the speaker instead of watching Bill. It's always very impressive.
Can be a little distracting.
It can be. It's super cool. We had you on a big, giant TV screen. We had to cut it back. He's too good. But it's great. It's really great to have you here. Maybe you can give us a bit of a rundown on what we're going to do today.
Sure. So today I'm going to be doing some sketching in Fresco, which is the new painting app from Adobe. And I've only actually recently started using this app. It's kind of like almost like a version of Photoshop adapted for the iPad. I've been working on the new iPad for about a year now, and I just love it as a sketching tool. And it's been really fun just playing around with all the new tools that have come in Fresco. So I'm going to be just doing some sketching with that and trying out some of the new cool, fun things it can do.
That's awesome. Yeah, and we Adobe gave you the brief around Lunar New Year as well.
Yeah. And it being Year of the Rat this year, I've decided to draw a rat. We'll just see where it goes.
That's super cool. And you're going to go from scratch, right?
We're going to go from scratch, so hopefully it all works out. I've kind of got an idea in my head of what I'm going to go with, but we'll just start with a blank page and see how it goes.
So I'm eating into your time. So I'm going to ask you questions as we go.
All good.
How about that? But we'll get stuck into it now, I think.
Okay, so now we can see the layout of Fresco. Similar to many drawing programs you might see, of all your tools on the left and layers on the right. So the thing I love most about this app is the beautiful natural brushes. I think is it Carl Webster?
Carl T. Webster,
Carl T. Webster is this genius who works for Adobe who makes amazing brushes, and they've really adapted this app to work with his brushes.
He's one of those people that was doing so much stuff with Adobe products externally that Adobe just had to say, well, I think you need to work directly for us.
Yeah. So I'm just using the most basic brush, which is the pencil brush, but it's really nicely adapted that it adapts to how you're holding the pencil. So I'm sort of just working on the side of the pencil, and I'm getting that nice sort of soft layout. So I'm just sort of loosely sketching in my character now, and then I can go in and add a bit more detail later. So the idea I had for this sketch was because it's Lunar New Year, so I kind of had lunar stuff, moon, and then Year of the Rat. So I was trying to find a way to work rats and the moon. And the moon being made of cheese seemed to be sort of the intersection point in that Venn diagram. Right. So I'm going for a kind of like a space mouse that is going for an adventure through outer space in the hope of getting a nice snack from a cheesy moon.
Nice cheese.
Yeah, so I've got my mouse over here, rat, flying through space, just loosely sketching him in. And I thought he would need a nice big fork to get a bite of the moon.
And so there's a couple of different types of layers that we have in Adobe Fresco. So when you're doing a sketching layer, I noticed you're using the top one. So what brush are you actually using?
So I'm just using the standard pencil brush.
Pencil brush,
yeah.
Cool.
So there is a whole lot of functionality within Fresco to work with vectors and with raster images. But for today, I'm just going to keep it old school in raster.
Keep it simple. Ratster.
Ratster.
Well done. Keeping it on
pay you the
brand.
big bucks.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I'm just going to work in a bit of this character here. One of the first jobs I had working in illustration was working on a book called The Adventures of Buzz Bomb, which was a children's story about a adventurous gang of cockroaches, and the bad guys in the book were evil rats. So I spent quite a lot of time drawing rats back then.
Oh wow! So you're
Yeah.
a pro at drawing rats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
You do draw a lot of like a lot of characters and things. When we were talking to Jeremy just recently, he's classically trained. Is that the same as you? Are you classically trained in illustration or drawing? Or
well, I mean, there's classic and there's classic. I mean,
Right.
I did a fine art course at College of Fine Arts in Sydney.
Right.
And then I did go to the Julian Ashton Drawing School, which is a much more traditional school.
Right.
But I knew people there who sort of didn't think they'd started going to school until they went off to Florence and sort of spent years at the academy working there. I haven't done anything as cool as that.
So there's layers to...
There's layers to classical,
see.
and I'm just on the outer layers. But yeah, no, I've done lots of life drawing and things. I haven't done any life drawing with rats.
They're pretty fast. It's just a blur.
Yeah. It helps with your sort of quick sketching skills, but
it's a terrible strain on the wrist, isn't it?
Yeah. All right. So I'm just working in the limbs of this guy, and keeping it nice and loose. And then I'm going to come and do some more finished stuff on a separate layer. What I'm keen to do with this one is probably just keep all the outline in pencil, and then I'm going to use some of the really fun brushes to do like a watercolor base.
And I noticed that you haven't changed the type of pencil or anything, but you've got like some very different kind of look. Like you've got some much harder like side of the pen.
Yeah, so like I'm doing right now, I'd sort of laid down a base with the side of the pencil, just getting sort of small gestural shapes in there, and now I'm going back over with the tip of the pencil, and you can see that much finer, finer tip to it.
And and so Corey was asking, what are you drawing on? So for those just joining, you're on the iPad.
Sure. Yeah, I'm on the iPad. With the iPad, I kind of waited out quite a few years because I didn't feel like the pen was quite there. But a year ago, I took the plunge and got one of the fancy iPad Pro ones, and it's really come a long way. It's really, really nice, and it's not a tool I use for a lot of sort of like really large scale commercial projects, but for doing like preparatory drawing and sketching, like I was showing you some of the sketches I did just on the train on the way here. It's been amazing, and it's got a lot more of the feel of just like pulling out a sketchbook or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, I think that guy's pretty much where I want him for now. Or better put in a spaceship, a little mode of transport for him. I found myself always doing the sort of like Tintin old style spaceship.
So cool, like a toy rocket ship
kind of
thing.
But did you see the new rocket that Elon Musk has designed that looks basically like...
No.
Really? Yeah. It's this new actual rocket, and it's all shiny chrome silver, and it's got like the sort of almost like teardrop shape of like an old 1950s rocket.
I'm sure that's intentional.
Yeah, it just seems, I don't know, it's kind of amazing to sort of have something that functionally goes to the moon, but like you want it to look fun as well.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I've got all that in the layer, and I'm pretty happy with where it's sitting on the page. I'll just center it a little bit more. And now I'm going to open up my adjustments bar for each of the layers. I'm just going to knock that guy way back so it's very faint. And now I'm going to open a new layer. And then with the same brush, I'm just going to go over and try and to kind of do a nice version of that. So with this, I've been trying to sort of get some of my key lines in with the point of the brush and keep that nice and neat. But when I'm sort of doing some of the other bits, just a few of those sort of softer marks with the side of the pencil seem to really just give it that much more sort of natural, soft feel. One of the things I like about this program is that they've incorporated a lot of natural feeling brushes, but they've also sort of in an effort to make it all feel quite realistic. They've kind of included almost some of the natural limitations of some of the tools. So I'll show you when we get to the watercolors that it functions very much like a watercolor brush, but also with some of the sort of the limitations in what you can do with a real watercolor brush. But it's kind of nice because it sort of changes the way that you work, and you don't have sort of the endless I mean, you do have the endless freedom of digital work using other tools, but with a little bit of that restraint, it makes you sort of work in a different way that really harks back to the kind of drawings I used to do when it was all on paper.
Right. Yeah, cool.
And also you can travel with it, which is great.
Super convenient.
Yeah,
makes it easy on the train.
Yeah, it makes it easy on the train. I remember flying once and bringing my watercolors and trying to do some watercolor paintings on the plane. And it actually worked out okay, but you do sort of cause a little bit of chaos with people around you.
Yeah, your neighbour's like, oh no.
No one wants to sit next to the watercolor guy.
Got a baby on one side and the watercolor guy on the other side.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of turbulence and then they look like a clown.
Yeah.
Just suddenly. Corey's in the chat just saying she's new to drawing, and a pad of some sorts is on the radar. So any advice for someone just kind of starting out that might not have a piece of tech yet?
Drawing on any kind of pad or drawing on the iPad itself?
I'm assuming that she's probably looking to, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Corey, but is drawing on buying some sort of drawing pad or stylus or something is probably in the future.
Oh, right. Yeah, I mean, there's so much stuff to choose from these days, and a lot of it has got significantly cheaper than it once was, which is fantastic. So Wacom has recently brought out a series of new drawing tablets that you just hook into your computer, which are using all their normal technology, but are at a much cheaper price point. They're sort of, I think, don't quote me on any of this, but they're around sort of the $600-700, which is a lot cheaper than it once was.
And that's Australian as well, so I'm not too sure where people are out there, but it's Australian dollars.
But I mean, you can just start off with a graphics tablet, which you can pick up for about $100, which is really quite cheap. But the iPad's been fantastic. I think, if I was starting out again, an iPad would be a great place to start, even if it is a little bit of a investment starting out.
Do you still draw with hand draw into an actual notebook?
Oh yeah. No, I mean it's one of those things where I'm kind of limited by time more than anything else. Drawing digitally just always ends up being quite a bit faster. So I tend to spend most of my time drawing digitally that way. But when I can, I still draw on paper. I recently went for a drawing prize near where I've moved to, the Blue Mountains, and I had to go see this couple that runs the drawing prize to sort of get to work your way into their good graces to be in this prize. And they're very, very traditional, and they were going over my drawings and sort of they'd say, have you used a ruler on this bit? And you'd say, oh well, yes, I was trying to draw a straight line. They say, I suppose that's okay. They're so intense about keeping up with traditional drawing.
Scrutinizing your
every
step.
So I'm not quite that full on. I still will lower myself to using a ruler, but
So funny, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just get this guy in, and after this we'll start working on the watercolor bits, which is where it's really fun. The big innovation in this app is the live brushes which they have, which sort of animate the brush sort of hitting the page and interacting with each other, and it's really cool to look at, and they're really fun to use. All right, just wipe that moon up.
And what sort of other work do you do?
Yeah, I do all kinds of things. I mean, my title, I suppose, is a commercial illustrator. So I do lots of work in advertising and for businesses and all kinds of things. But I've actually started working on a children's book right now for a publisher, which has been
Awesome.
A lot of fun. It's very detailed. It's like one of those Finder book kind of things where it's those big crowd drawings and lots of tiny things hidden in there. That's been taking up a lot of my time recently.
Knowing your artwork, I can imagine how time-consuming that will be.
Yeah, it's
because you're very
slow.
Detailed.
Yeah. It's a really fun process though. I'm really enjoying it.
What are you building that in? I'm very curious as to what app you might use.
I'm doing it on the iPad, and
Okay.
well, I'm doing a lot of the preparatory sketching on the iPad, and then quite a bit of it is going in Photoshop ends up.
Just lots of Photoshop layers.
Oh my God.
It's going to be a big file.
It's crazy.
And is that printing out to like some sort of Where's Wally scale?
Yeah, they're 60 or 70
or Waldo
centimeters.
for our US friends.
Yeah. So they're huge files. But my computer's almost keeping up with it.
Almost keeping up.
Yeah. It's been really hot where I live in the Blue Mountains. So I have my computer and I have a fan on me, and then have a tiny little fan
for the computer? I have the same thing. I have the same thing at home. I have a little fan for my laptop when I'm rendering. Rendering files.
I worry the poor thing's just going to keel over one day.
That's Australian weather at the moment.
Yes, but it's funny. Okay, so I'm going to do a little play around with some of the watercolor brushes now. And if you watch, it's really fun how you can you put the brush down and you can see the water sort of bloom out, and the colors and the mixing all feels really natural. So I'll just show you a bit of that. All right, so I'll choose a mousy kind of color. Let's start with a slightly bigger brush. I can change my brush size here. And as I'm painting, you can see the colors all start to mix. And it's amazingly well simulated how much it feels like using a watercolor. It's programmed in the sort of the actual wetness of the page. Once I start adding colors to this, you'll be able to see how they mix together. And when I was talking earlier about some of the limitations, like say I choose a light pink here for the ears, and I start painting, it'll go on fine there. But once I start mixing it, you can't get the lightness. You have to sort of work from dark to light.
Right.
Yeah. But it's fantastic because you get those lovely smooth gradients and that natural kind of feel of a watercolor brush. And so I wanted to add a little bit of pink to the nose. It's not really going to work if I just kind of dab the pink there, because it'll just kind of darken the existing colors. So what I'll do is I'll get my eraser and I'll erase back part of the nose, and then I'll start just dabbing in my pink there, and you can see the colors mixing into it. And I can get that lighter color. I've actually gone a little bit too far there. I'll take it back a bit more. And it'll just start to mix in. And it's really fun to work with. It's very satisfying to do the whole process.
Yeah.
And obviously you're going to go over the line, so I'll just start sort of knocking it back a little bit there.
I remember when Carl Webster was demoing this on stage at Adobe. He started doing that, showing the watercolors, and he was saying something that I'm sure you're very thankful for, which is, but the thing is, working with watercolor, you can't just erase things.
Yes, so, absolutely.
And he just erased it, and then redid it, and it's just like, wow.
Yeah. No, it's a huge difference. So I'll work in a little bit more, and it's great because you can just sort of mess around and add whatever colors you want. So it's you do have sort of that lovely feel of natural watercolors, but it's sort of consequence free as well. If you add the wrong color, you can just always move away from it. And it's nice that you're really mixing. Like I'm adding a few darker colors here, and I can just sort of tap some colors in and then let them sort of mix around themselves. While it can become a little, I'll use a different color there. One of the great things you can do, though, it being a digital tool, is you can automatically dry your palette and start again. So right now, if I add another color, it sort of mixes into the existing colors around it. But if I wanted to start afresh, I can just tap on my layer and say dry layer. And now if I start painting onto it, it goes down like a new color.
Like as if it was white on a white paper?
Yeah, as if it was white. It still mixes the tones, so you can see there, but it's not sort of bleeding into all the colors around it. You can kind of start afresh. So I might select my color. I'm just tapping on the screen there to pick up that color palette. And I can start painting a little bit of lightness in there. What I might do now is pull up another one of the fun brushes. So if I go down to my dry media, there's a soft chalk, or maybe I'll go with a soft pastel. And with this, it's going to let me sort of draw directly on top of it, so I can get some more solid highlights there with this brush. And it's nice. It feels a lot more sort of physical than a lot of digital tools, because I'm really pressing on the screen and sort of pushing things in and smudging them around.
And you have pressure sensitivity, like pressure dynamics, all turned on as well?
Yes, yeah. we doing for time?
We're good.
Okay. Oh, good.
So probably another 30 minutes?
30 minutes? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool, that should be fine.
Give or take.
Yep.
You know?
So I'll just start neatening up some of the edges, and all right, let's work on this cheesy moon. So I'll go back to my watercolors, and I'll choose a nice cheesy yellow.
Do you ever use a color palette or color reference for your drawing, or do you just do it as you're going and pick it
For something smaller like this, like I was watching Jeremy's one just half an hour ago, and I was seeing the palette he has, and for something like a more detailed composition, I'll definitely have a palette on the go, and I'm trying to get better at using a sort of more reduced palette. But for something like this, I kind of know it's got brown mouse, yellow moon.
Brown mouse, yellow moon. Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward.
It's nothing tricky.
Yeah. All right, I'll just start a new layer because I don't want to paint onto that wet watercolor. So I'll go back to a sort of another scratchy dry brush, and I might just get a bit of texture into this moon. It's a little bit much. And then in the background, I'll draw a bit of the space in, and I'll show you some more of the live brush effects there that are really nice. All right, let's get some highlights in there.
We were talking previously, like just I guess there was some people that were interested in, illustration commercially in the previous chat, probably in this one as well. You have an agent, so you work with Jackie Winter.
Yeah, so for about the past, I think it's just over 2 years now, I've been with an agency in Melbourne called Jackie Winter, and the third agency that I've worked with, but they're just fantastic, and so probably I'd say 80% of my work comes through them.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
quite a lot.
Yeah. I do a lot of work with those guys.
Yeah.
And some of them said they'd be watching, so checking up on you. There'll be a quiz afterwards.
I'm going to call Jeremy Wartzman right after this. You better be watching, dude. It's a small industry in Australia.
Yeah.
Everyone knows everyone. Yeah, it's super cool.
Did you know Jeremy from back in his design days?
No, I met Jeremy because I was hosting Creative Mornings in Sydney.
Oh, of
and
course.
he was hosting Creative Mornings in Melbourne.
Yeah.
So we got to know each other pretty well.
Yeah.
Through some of that. We actually had this fun idea. We were going to get a speaker from Sydney and a speaker from Melbourne, and we were going to fly them to the opposite state.
Yeah.
And we were going to go with them and host.
Oh, right.
But we weren't going to tell anybody about it. So Jeremy was going to host the Sydney Creative Mornings just turn up and start talking.
Yeah.
And I was going to do the same. And we got to the point where we were talking about the date and everything.
Yeah.
And we just couldn't quite manage the schedules, which was very unfortunate because it would have been a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, I've never been to the Melbourne one. I have to check it out. So I'm doing the sort of bulb and the mask, and again, just sort of touching colours in there. And then I might go back and neaten that edge up, and I'll get some highlights going in there as well. All right. Again, just adding a little bit more chalky highlights over the whole thing. Yeah, so I was trialing it before, adding some. Do a bit of a space texture in the background. So I'll get a nice big watercolor brush, and we'll make it a kind of spacey dark blue. And we'll start painting into the background there, and you can really start to see the blending there. And let me just shrink that down a little bit, actually. And then something I've really enjoyed playing around with is you can paint a white watercolor, which is basically just adding water to the canvas in a way.
Right.
So if I start painting around here, you can see this space area start to just sort of blend in to the background.
Starts sort of bleed in together, doesn't it?
Yeah. So you can see there it bleeding out, and the animation works really well because you get all the sort of distortion of colors you would in a watercolor. And so I paint, and then if I pick up one of those colors and start adding it back in, it sort of washes into the already wet background. So you get all those really nice effects there.
have a tech question from Steve. He was just asking about the battery power
On the
for the
iPad.
iPad. Like, how long could you do what you're doing now? Would it last the train trip? Would it last the day?
I don't want to sound like a Apple salesperson, but it's amazing. It's the best battery I've ever had on a device. Like I've been, I mean, I live in the Blue Mountains, so it's a good 2.5 hours to get here.
Yeah.
And I was painting most of the time, and it's fine. And I've got it on charge now, but like 4 or 5 hours of straight work seems to get through just fine.
Yeah.
So it's been really good. So you can see here I've been painting that sort of blotchy brush, and it's all kind of mixing in. But again, I can just go and dry the layer, and then if I wanted to add, say, some stars over the top, I can do sort of stars there, and they won't bleed in. And that seems to work.
That's a cool brush.
Yeah.
You're working very quick. You selected everything on a layer at one point very quickly. How did you do that so quick? What's the shortcut for that?
I was selecting everything in the layer. I'm just using the transform tool.
Yeah.
So it's that one there. So I can just pick things up.
And just
move
grabs
around.
everything.
Yeah, and just grabs everything. Cool. Yeah. Okay. I might do a little bit of finessing on our little mousy friend. I'm just going to grab a slightly darker brush. Work into that. Oh, the wrong way.
We've got OG Adobe Live watching. Hey guys,
Who's OG Adobe Live?
our friends from San Fran.
Oh, hello, friends from San Fran.
Super cool. We're in their house on Behance. It's good to see you.
All right, well, that guy's come along. I might actually, what I can do is I can grab all my layers and start putting them into one big mega folder on the side, which would allow me to make changes. But if I disappear them and start them up, I might just show you some of the other brushes that are going on here, because I've had a really fun time playing around with the other ones that they have. So one of my favorite ones is the rake brush. So you can see all these kind of crazy effects you get with that, and that's been a really nice one for a kind of like a hair effect. So if I start off with this, I might get some cool kind of effects with that. It's quite random, this brush. You'd say it's hard to sort of follow where it goes. But then let me pull up some of the other ones we've got here. So in ink, we've got some really nice gritty brush textures. I always love these kind of ones. I'm so excited that the Kyle Webster ones have come onto the iPad. I've been trying to find a way to get these kind of really rough brushes onto there for a while.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm working quite detailed, but I love all the sort of mistakes that come up with a brush like this as you're working. It's sort of like the sort of preset chaos that you want out of a when I'm drawing on paper. I like to have a selection of really sort of old beat up brushes to work with as well.
Right.
And often I'll be recycling toothbrushes and things like that to use for ink drawing. So having sort of the control of a digital device with some of that chaos is really fun.
You did that in about a minute. That's incredible.
Done a lot of profiles in my time. So I'll keep working that character out, and then I'll show you some of the masking techniques for coloring in this kind of line work. So it's nice, sort of working in a really kind of gestural way, getting those down, and then coming in and sort of finessing it as you go along.
Wow, that's incredible.
Thanks.
Yeah, super cool. What, I mean, I know you draw a lot and there's lots of illustration and drawing fast, but why have you drawn so many profiles? Is it just part of drawing? It's just always a profile to draw? It's
part of a profile. It's like, when you're on the phone and you're doing squiggles.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of like my version of squiggles.
My squiggles don't look like that.
Okay. I don't know. It's just one of those things I sort of return to over and over again.
Right.
So, and it's almost like my you know how, I don't know, I have a playlist on Spotify, but it's like my speaker or headphone testing playlist. So it's a couple of songs that I'll have that I like test out speakers, and it's like a profile is like that for drawing tools. Like it's a drawing I know I can execute quite quickly and just sort of like see how something feels.
So you might be testing the paper or the ink or the tool or something digital.
Yeah. So if I select that layer, I can go to mask layer contents. And that just makes a little mask for me. So you can see I'm sliding over in the layers panel. So I've been able to mask that layer. And then if I make a new layer, and I can copy that mask, and then I can paste that mask into a new layer. So that was all a bit complicated sounding for basically, I can paint onto these lines now on a new layer. So I have the freedom to get a new brush. So I might get a nice painting brush. So I'm going to get Cezanne number 2. And then if I go into the top layer, hopefully this works, I can get an orange brush, and I can just paint within those lines there.
Cool.
So I can kind of texture this line work on top. So I might roughly add a bit of this orange, then maybe I'll take a bit of red for the darker sections there.
Oh wow! So you can like instantly give it a bit of depth.
Yeah. No, it's really fun adding that, and you can add some sort of like even if I went to my splattery brush from before, let's make that white. I can kind of splatter within there and sort of really kind of grunge it up a little bit. Right, so I might add a bit of watercolor to that now. So let's get a sort of a palish skin tone. And again...
There we go. We've had a request to see if you would render human skin, which render human skin sounds like very dark. Yeah.
I spent a lot of weekends in my basement rendering
human skin. That's why you moved to the mountains, because you need to have a well in the middle of your house.
Oh, jeez. Okay, rendering human skin. Okay, well, I mean, luckily watercolor is one of those amazingly forgiving...
Festus.
Forgiving materials that it sort of inherently looks nice. You don't have to do a great deal to it. But painting skin is... with any kind of detail is slightly challenging because you don't have a great deal of control. It's a bit chaotic. But what I could do is I can show you, so you see I've got kind of like this pale base tone to the skin there. Now I probably, if I wanted to add a bit of, I do this with real watercolors all the time. I haven't actually tried it on the iPad, but I'm assuming it'll work.
Let's find out. It's live.
Let's find out. Is to just sort of dab colors. And if I just wanted to sort of like brighten that cheekbone or add a little bit to the nose, I can just dab a little bit there and it naturally blends in. So I could do a little bit around the lips as well. And it's a nice way if I'm sort of like adding a rouge or something to there. And
it's very subtle. It might be hard to see. See at home. I had a cheeky look over here. Cheeky look? That's why I'm here.
And I'll try and do a little bit the same with some shadow. So around the eyes, I'll just kind of dab it there, and you can see that color bleeding out. And I'll do a little bit under the chin as well, maybe darken the tone of that. But again, I can just go ahead and dry my layer, and now I can work some lighter tones on top of that. So I'll just clean up the edge of that line there. Then maybe I'll go in and I'll get one of my nice painting brushes, and I'll add a little bit of white to the eye. And maybe we'll select something for the lips as well. So yeah, like I was saying, it's a nice program in that like I'm kind of just playing at this point. I'm loving just trying out all the new tools and not it sort of stops me going too much into technical mode. I can kind of loosen up a bit.
Right.
Just get a bit more of that down.
Do you use the Carl T. Webster brushes outside of Fresco, like in your other work?
Yeah, absolutely. it's funny. I got the whole mega pack, which is hundreds of brushes, and then I found about 2 that I really liked, but then I use them all the time, and I haven't really explored all that much further.
I've heard that from some other illustrators. They kind of have 1 or 2 like real go-to brushes that they just always go back to, or most of their work ends up.
Yeah, and it's funny. It sort of starts becoming your style almost. Like you come, it sort of adds to your sort of aesthetic in a way. So I'm just adding a bit of tone here with one of the painting brushes on top of my watercolor. All right, now I might start doing something with the hair. What's a canvas brush? Actually, I haven't tried out a bunch of these. Oh, Impressionist.
We can try it out together. That's why we're here.
Oh, that's nice. Okay, maybe I'll do that. Okay, I've changed my mind. I think she's going to be blonde now. So let's get some lighter tones there. I'll just start painting that in. And with the live brushes, maybe I'll show you a bit of that. With the live painting brushes, they're great for mixing colors together.
That looks amazing.
Thanks. So I'll go back and get some of my oil paints out. So I'll get a chunky oil paint, and you can see with these, it's hard to tell on the screen, but you can see the actual build-up of the paints mixing together on the canvas.
Yeah.
And for that, I'm going to want to lighten up this hair tone as well. So let me start painting on top of that.
And that was using your mask from before?
Yes, yeah.
So you're back onto the mask.
I'm just painting into the mask to get something that fits a little bit better with that new color of hair.
I mean, one of the most striking things is just how quickly you've created this, like so fast, and also just to add in like as you're talking over the top of it,
Right.
answering our questions and everything.
Cool.
It's pretty amazing.
Well, I mean, it's the thing I love about the iPad. I mean, I spend quite a lot of time just sort of sitting in the couch with my partner and chatting and sketching. It makes the whole process a lot more casual. Not to get too nerdy about this, but if you look at the way I'm able to mix those colors together, and say I'm going to take this lighter color here, I can sort of push that color back into the other one and mix them together.
You're actually like moving it around.
Yeah, it feels quite physical. So you're sort of really able to work it like a real material. I don't know a great deal about oil painting, so I'm just going to assume this is what it feels like sometimes. All right, so I think that hair's still looking a bit neat, so I might start going over the top. I love doing this with different textured brushes, of just sort of layering over and over again until you get something really interesting. You can, of course, take it too far and just end up with a crazy squiggle. It's kind of a fun short rake, so maybe I'll choose a lighter color there and start working back over there. We could even take some of that color, start working that back over as well. Maybe if there was some sort of coat or jacket she was wearing, we could start working that in. Maybe I'll use one of the oil brushes again. Okay, oil paint short, and let's go for a light blue.
Getting like French resistance vibes.
Yeah, something like that. She should have some sort of big cigar or something. And you can see actually I've got a mixed bunch of my colors together by accident. That's okay. And I think some sort of feathery ruff is in order as well. So I'll get another one of my rake brushes. And we'll go with some sort of All right, now I think it'd be good to paint Paris in the background. So how long have we got?
Sounds good. We've got maybe like 12 or 13
12 minutes?
Yeah,
Heaps of time to paint Paris into the background.
Heaps of time for you to paint an entire city. I'd be here all day. And it'd look like Munich or something.
All right, so let's paint a bit of background in there. Oh, you can see a bit of that blues coming through the bits in her head that I've missed out. So let me just work underneath that. Get rid of
What's your favorite like type of job to work on?
Um,
Is it the children's book that you're doing, or is that just so massive that there's quite a lot of manual work involved?
I'm really enjoying doing the children's book. That's
Yeah.
been really fun. But it is very very labor intensive, and you sort of having to perform similar kind of drawings
Right, so it's
over and
pretty
over again.
repetitive, yeah.
But I mean, it's been a fantastic job to work on. But actually, I did one late last year, which was a design for Santa's house in Federation Square in Melbourne. So like where people were going to take their Santa photos.
Oh wow.
And that was a really fun job because it was a really large format. I love working big, so you could fit lots and lots of detail into it. And it was something that was going to be sort of I went to Federation Square and I could see people sort of interacting with the piece you just got a lot more of a sense of your picture being out in the world. Often you do these things in a bit of isolation. You send them off to the client, and that's the end of it. But sort of going in and being able to see people with your work was really really fun. Actually, did most of that with the single Kyle Webster brush that I use.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Might see if I can add. One of the great things with doing this digitally is you can do things you could never do in real life as well, like doing a watercolor brush over oil, which would never work. But I'm hoping I can just. Oh yeah, I can do a bit of sort of light cloud stuff here as well.
Yeah, cool. Owain was asking in chat, do you ever work in grayscale and convert to color with layers, like layer blending modes?
Yeah, absolutely. I did a production art course a little while ago, and they were really big on sort of learning tone before going on to anything more detailed, and it's a really important skill to have. I with a lot of my stuff, I do just go directly onto color, but working in grayscale first is a really great way of I don't know, half the challenge of color is getting the tone right. Actually, it's such a big part of it. So when I've done one short oil painting course, and you would just do you do like a year of just black and white before they let you touch the colors or anything like that.
Oh, it's like getting your pen license in.
It's very much like
primary
getting
school.
your pen license. Yeah. You sort of work your way up to it. What am I doing now? Might get one of these charcoal brushes and add a few rooftops in.
We're getting pretty close to the end, so if anyone does have any more questions, probably the last 10 minutes or so I think we're up to, so drop them in the chat. It's been nice hanging out. There's been some good questions in there. Thanks for everyone that's been sticking around for the last two. What have you guys been up to? Have you been working at the same time? Like second screening? I know Steve's probably working. What are you working on? Getting to a lot of layer territory here.
Yeah, it's getting to a bit chaotic. The app's been holding up really well. Sometimes when you get to lots of layers like this, things start freaking out.
Kind of working a bit. We're distracting you a little bit. It's pretty cool.
Anyway, one of the great things they've added into this is you can go back and you can publish and export it however you want, but they've got the time-lapse feature on here as well, so we can do a sort of quick recap of where
that's
we're
perfect. You can have a 30-second rest there. That's perfect.
It always feels very... Oh god, that went quickly.
That went really quick.
Let's try that again. So, yeah, it sort of sat for a little while in the preparatory sketch, and then it all rushed through.
Yeah, it did,
watercolor.
It's doing the rush again.
Yeah.
It's funny, you know what we used to do back in the day, in old school days, we used to extend out so you could do as many backspaces as you possibly could in
Oh,
Photoshop.
yeah.
And then we used to build the whole entire project, and then we go, okay, now screen record, and now just Control Z.
Really?
And
you
so
could do
we'd
the
go
whole
all
thing?
the way back,
God, how did
and
that...
then you'd flip the video, and that's how we would do a
That's
perfect time
amazing.
lapse. Yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Everyone's like, wow, you didn't make a mistake the entire time, because of course.
oh, of course, because you would fix all the history states. Oh, wow.
I know, that was back in the day.
Yeah, I'll go back to the home screen. I'll actually show you a. This is actually my second time doing the mouse picture. I did another version of it.
Right.
On the way here.
Just to make sure you got the hind legs right.
Just to make sure I got the hind legs right. Yeah. So this is my.
So it's a different version.
This is my first attempt on the train here.
Cool.
So I actually think this one came out a little bit better with some of the textural stuff there. But it's great being able to zoom in and look at that, and
Yeah.
it's amazing. Yeah, and it's so fun keeping it really loose with something like this.
That's super cool. I like his little backpack.
Yeah. Which one was that? Oh, I never finished up his little spacecraft down here.
His little spacecraft. Got another question. How do you handle painting with like heavy lighting? So when someone has heavy or cool lighting, do you work with undertones from the beginning?
Oh, right. Yeah, again, going back to the production course that I did, there was a guy called Ev Shepherd who taught me there, and he did this really interesting thing where he would find, like if he was doing something epic lighting, like say you were doing a scene with a person standing under a street lamp on a smoky street or something like that, he would find something that was not the picture that he wanted, but it was like evocative of the picture. So he would say, maybe find a picture of a smoky factory or something that had the right tone.
Right.
And he'd just drop that into the background, and then he'd like pick up colors and start painting and sort of use something that was tonally correct, but not the right picture, and just use that as a background and start painting crazily on top of it. And sort of you'd use the palette and the feeling of it. And I mean, obviously you need to know what you're composing in the first place, but he would sort of use this kind of odd collage technique of putting together all these images that start in something quite abstract and then refine that down into a finished picture. It was a really interesting process. But doing something with dramatic lighting, I think doing tonal studies like the black and white is always the best way to go, because you can really tell a story with the intensity of the shades that you're using before you get into color. And black and white is a great way of starting off and sort of like really nailing those key compositional devices within a picture before you go into sort of finessing it, making it pretty.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's a very different approach from something like this, but he would be working in a really if I just disappear all of these layers and open a new one, he would work in this really sort of if we get like a gritty brush, and say we had a square of an image like this, he would just use very few tones. So say we were doing the street light one, he would say, I'm going to choose 3 tones and I'll paint the whole picture with those 3 tones. So say that was the street lamp here, and then there was a glow coming from a car on the side here, and glow coming off my figure under the street lamp.
Right.
It would sort of lay it out in this really basic form, and then once he kind of got a sense of that, start blocking in sort of more subtle shades underneath that, and sort of composing a picture that way.
Oh wow.
And sort of really working from first principles to bring the piece together, and that seems like a really good way to go. But that's much more a production approach to sort of painting. My work's a lot more line based, so I don't often start off in that way, but it's a great way to draw.
Oh, it's fascinating. Super cool. Well, I think we're actually winding down. Thanks for everyone for coming and joining in the chat. It's been incredible.
Great. I hope that wasn't too sort of scattershot. I kind of jumped around quite a bit.
No, it's perfect.
It was really fun.
No, so I had a great time. Can we have a look at the final artwork again?
Sure.
Maybe both of them, because you ended up doing 2. Just in case you guys are just joining. I know some people are just joining now, but we are winding down. Video will be available on demand as well. I've been here with Bill Hope. It's been awesome. Hopefully it won't be an entire year.
No.
Between now and next time, we'll have to get you back. But yeah, this has been incredible. This artwork all created in Fresco. super, super, super quick, which I think has been one of the biggest kind of mind-blowing things for me, and so many different textures and just so fast.
Cool.
How you've worked?
So that's the first one that we did was a mouse here in space heading for his moon cheese.
Moon cheese.
And we're playing around with a bunch of different textures there. And then the second one that we did was this woman here with her ruffle coat and exciting hair. So that was using a bunch of the wacky ink rakes and scratchy brushes and all sorts of things like that.
That's super cool. And lots of tips and techniques and everything for people that are just starting out. And I'm sure people that have been illustrating for a long time. It's super cool. I love watching you work. Where can people find out more of your stuff? Where would you send people to find more of your work?
So you can find me on Instagram pretty easily. So if you just type in Bill Hope. I've recently updated my website with a bunch of commercial projects that I've finished recently. So you can go to billhope.com.au.
Cool.
And a bunch of work there. Or if you go to jackiewinter.com, I believe there's a page there as well with all my commercial work. Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, and I'm also showing in the Lost Bear Gallery in Katoomba. So if you want to see my work in real life, it is available there as well.
Oh, fantastic. All right, awesome. Well, it's been great to have you on. Thank you, everyone in the chat. Festus, Johanna for moderating the chat. Adobe Live dropped in before. Thanks for all the great questions. It's been awesome. We're back tomorrow with Jeremy Lords, part 3 with Jeremy Lords, who's been sticking around. We're going to finish off his artwork, all using Photoshop. So thank you very much. Thanks again, Bill.
No worries, thank you.
And thank you all. We'll see you tomorrow.